evening and welcome to Meticulous Moments. My name is Juanita Kapp. You can reach me at meticulousmacarons@gmail.com or find me on LinkedIn. Since the COVID-19 pandemic hit the globe, I've had the wonderful privilege to meet a wide array of fantastic individuals. These individuals have truly touched my life in so many positive ways. Amongst this group of people, there are authors, public speakers, life coaches, poets, leaders, and visionaries. They are the unsung heroes of our time. Therefore, I decided to start the Meticulous Moments movement out of a sense of my gratitude. It is my way of giving back to the community. Let us share and reshare their stories in an effort to build a better society. Good day, Meticulous Moments audience. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another enlivening session here at the Meticulous Moments podcast, where we facilitate community upliftment through leadership development. And today we have the wonderful privilege of spending time with the amazing Jim Hetherington. A little bit more about Jim. Jim is a relationship expert and is committed to empowering individuals and partners to create next level success in life, love, and business through his books, programs, speeches, and more. He's been married to his wife Mary for 40 years, and they enjoy traveling and seeking new adventures. For 34 years, Jim has coached and mentored people. He's an entrepreneur and has operated his renovation and construction company for the past 27 years. And being a pastor for 23 years, it's safe to say he's uniquely qualified to address and speak on many areas of a relationship. Invitations have been extended to Jim to speak nationally and internationally. He's a 5-time author, and major networks like NBC, ABC, and Fox have featured him. And he's a regular guest on podcasts and other broadcasts. He strongly encourages people that they can have success in their business and career, as well as home life and their romantic relationships. It doesn't have to be either or, it can be both. There are 4 key areas Jim takes people through: your relationship world, your physical world, your business career world, and your spiritual world. And he shows you how to thrive in all of these areas. Jim is such a fantastic individual. We simply had a blast together, and looking at all these credentials, we know in this session we are in well-rounded, very powerful leadership hands. Thank you so much, Jim, for joining us. And with that, we say welcome to our special guest, Jim Hetherington. Good day, Meticulous Moments audience. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another vibrant session regarding the topic of leadership. And today we have the wonderful privilege of spending time with the amazing Jim Hetherington. Welcome, Jim. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Juanita. Thanks for having me here. This is great.
It's amazing to have you on the show. We are so blessed and we cannot wait to learn from you. Jim, now we've had a virtual coffee before. We've spoken on Messenger. I feel like I've known you much longer than I have. But the audience, some of the audience members might not know you yet. Would you like to introduce yourself to them as well, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really important, isn't it? We could carry on a conversation and nobody will have any clue, who is this guy? So, my name is Jim Hetherington and I'm a relationship breakthrough specialist. I've been coaching and mentoring for over 34 years now. I've been an entrepreneur and business owner for 27 years, and I was a pastor in between all those things for 23 years, and I've been happily married for 40 years this year, and so there's not too many areas of relationship that I can't speak into because I've lived through the whole thing of life, love, and business, and how to navigate all those things, and that's what I teach individuals and partners and groups, how to go to that next level in all their relationships in life, love, and marriage.
I love that. And in our initial meeting, we just clicked, and I realized afterwards when you mentioned, business and the ministry, that is what shaped you into the phenomenal leader that you are today. And you're actually busy with a research project. Would you like to explain what your research project is about?
Yes, I would. Yes. So I'm working on my third personal book on relationships. And 3 years ago, it started as the working title was I Do Now What? And it was just to help couples navigate after they get married, because so much energy is put into getting to know one another and planning the day and doing all that stuff that oftentimes I found people just weren't prepared for life afterwards. So that's what it started out. But through my coaching and mentoring, I meet with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs that are just starting up or have been in business for a number of years, and helping them navigate through what I call life, love, and business. And even when I'm working with business owners or people, planning and building opportunities, it always comes back to relationships. How do I navigate through life? And so I realized that there's more than just one I do commitment. For those of us who are in a long-term marriage or long-term relationship or marriage, we've committed, we've said I do, but there's more I do's. There's I do to our career. There's I do to ourselves. There's I do to our families and friends. There's I do to travel. I do to being successful. There's all these I do commitments. And what happens over time is we don't intentionally neglect all these things. It's just we get stretched to commit and keep up the commitments that we have. And so I'm researching right now, interviewing entrepreneurs and finding their successes, finding their struggles, finding what's working, what's not working, so that I can incorporate that in my book. Because I really believe that, it doesn't serve us well to be really successful and then all of a sudden realize that we're lonely. We have nobody in our lives. We've broken all those relationships. We've broken all those ties. And so to have that success across the board, I think is really important. So that's become my new mission. I've evolved the book for the last time. I've evolved it about 3 or 4 times. So this is the last evolution of it. And my intention is to get it completed by the end of this year so that I can have it published next year.
That is absolutely wonderful. And it's a contemporary, necessary research project, because I realize, even in the ministry and through the counseling, that there are people that really struggle with relationship building. To some people, it's something that comes naturally. And I always tell people that trust is also involved. But with people that are maybe not as easy to trust, or it's not as easy for them to trust other people, relationship building isn't often easy for them as we would, think it is. So across all those borders, love, life, business, relationship building, trust, all of those, aspects are very important. And I feel that your project is just going to bring out the best. It's going to bring a product that is really necessary for people to read and learn. The I do's, I think, is phenomenal. I've never heard of that before. And it's so true. You have to say I do to your success. You have to say I do to yourself, to your projects, to your family. And also, I love the fact, and I always commend guests on the show, I love the fact that people are still very strong into family values, very strong into keeping their marriages safe and secure, because the world has changed, life has changed, and we have to protect these important facets of being human, our humanness. So now I wanted to ask you, as leadership is such a broad topic, we can just talk leadership for days.
Sure.
What part of leadership to you is the part that you most enjoy?
Wow. The thing I think I most enjoy is having a vision or creating an idea, having an idea, and then gathering people and just seeing it come to life. That's, I think, the most exciting part about it. And it's not that I take a dictatorship role and just say, this is the vision, this must be done. It's including people and seeing people come to life. Some of the greatest examples are years ago when I was pastoring youth, and we built a relationship with a group in Nicaragua. So I'm up in Ontario, Canada. So that's about a 6-hour travel for us to go down there. And we would go down for 10 to 14 days. And I would take high school students down there, and they would experience all the different elements of, poverty and development and ministry, and doing all the different things and service work. I mean, sometimes that was the first time they had ever done anything outside of their own home, actually doing things. And so it was great to have that kind of vision and see, a dozen kids. We would take at least 10 to 12, 14 kids every year And just to see them come to life and just buy into the vision of going out and supporting and encouraging and helping people. And then to see the life-changing things happen. And I think that's the biggest thing that I love, just to see that transformation in their lives and how it's impacted many of them.
What comes through is the servant leadership approach that you take. It shines through the fact that you are heart-centered, that you invest in other people, and that it brings you joy. And I don't think there's lots of people in leadership roles. And there's lots of good people out there with wonderful intentions, but it doesn't always bring them joy like it brings you. When I look at the projects that you do, I see that you go out, you love to uplift people, and it brings you joy. And I hope that there are mentors out there that are teaching the younger leaders that leadership is not a job, it's a calling. It's something that you are called to do. And when we focus on the people and who they are, what they're about, then the team just automatically is uplifted. The morale is high. There's a lovely atmosphere. Everybody is happy to do what they have to do. And then the task gets completed. So it's very important for us to focus like you on the individuals. And to really care. And I believe that you being a pastor as well, having that background, has assisted you to go from strength to strength, because you understand people, you know what they feel, and you know how to work with them.
Yeah. And I mean, if we take that group of, let's say I take 12 students down, I recognize that some have the ability to step up and speak and to reach more people, whereas others would far rather just help and serve and do things behind the scenes. So I'm not going to force that one person that really feels comfortable just bringing the equipment and setting things up and supporting that way. I'm not going to force them to go out and, now speak to the masses and do different things that is really going to, I will encourage them to push the comfort zone, of course. But I'm not going to take them out, because each one of those positions is important. And leadership is found at all those different levels, right? They can lead that, a team of bringing the equipment and making sure it's set up. That's a leadership skill. And others are, worship leaders or speakers. And they all have their element, and then they can lead inside those. And so I always found the place where they fit the best, and then stretched and encouraged them to, explore where they feel comfortable, explore that a little bit deeper.
I love that. You are setting them up for success.
Sure.
And you said something that is very, very true, that people need to realize. It doesn't matter how small your function is in a team. Even if you have a small function or a small role to fulfill, we need you in the team.
Yes.
Everyone in the team is important. And I think that is something that the young leaders, maybe even after the COVID, maybe even some sergeant leaders can grow in. It really doesn't matter if your role is not as big or magnificent or out there as the other team member, but if you have a role to play and you are good at that, just do your best. And if everybody does that, then the results will be amazing. And it's not just about results, it's always about the people. Now, I know, Jim, I know, we've been in the ministry, we've worked with people, we've seen the best, we've seen the worst of people. We've had projects that were magnificent, we've had projects that were less magnificent, and we've made decisions. I've made decisions that were point on, spot on, but I've also made bad decisions. And I want to ask you, what's the worst decision that you've ever made, whatever role you want to interpret it in, if it's leadership, pastoral, or life, or business, and how did you recover from that? Because why I put this question in is a lot of the leaders that I work with, that I give training to, if they fail at something, they internalize that failure and they make it a part of themselves, and that is wrong. If you fail at something and you make a mistake, you redo, you restart, you recalibrate. So what was your worst decision ever, and how did you recover from it?
Well, I've got two that come to mind. So I'll share two. Yeah. One is in business. So I run a renovation construction company, have for 27 years, and I still keep my hand in it a little bit today. But years ago, we decided the next step would be for us to build homes. And so I connected with a guy that I knew just a little bit. I didn't know him really well. And we started to build some homes. We had an opportunity to buy some lots, and we started to build some homes. And he had already started a couple projects on his own. And then we had we had 4 going. Actually, they were independent of his. And he was struggling in his, so I helped him out financially. We just kind of worked back and forth. And then when the projects came to completion, he finished his and sold them. He didn't give me my money back. He just, the money that I lent him to help him get through those stages, he didn't give it back to me. And that caused a real rift between us. And so the biggest lesson I learned there was, it's great to get in and help and support and do that stuff. But when we start to tangle up our finances and tangle up everything else, we need to have some good set boundaries. We need to have good, clear expectations. My expectation was once the house was sold, the money was coming back to me. His expectation was, well, I'm just going to continue to keep that because I need to keep that, take that money and now help me, bail out of some other situations. And so that caused a lot of problems. And so we almost lost a lot during that time. But I have a very supportive wife, and she dug in and she helped and she worked alongside me, and we worked our way out of that. And so it was really challenging. The other one that comes to mind was in ministry. I can see things in people, right? As leaders, we see qualities in others. We recognize it. They don't think we know them. They don't think they understand who they are, but we do. We get it. And I'm an introvert, and so I can naturally see that in people. I can see the introverts. I can see what we call the wallflowers. They're hugging onto the walls because they're afraid to engage. They're afraid to step out. And there was a young girl on a mission trip with us one year, and I could see some tremendous gifting in this girl. And I pushed her into a place where she would use that gift, and it backfired because she wasn't ready to do it. And she just broke down in tears and said, I can't do this, and walked away. And she just, she's just kind of gone. And so I had to step back and then re-engage with her, just encourage her and support her and allow her to take, some side steps to really kind of gain her composure and to get back in there. And she never fully engaged back into the level that I thought she could or believed that she could. And so for me, it was recognizing that even though I see a gifting in someone, I can't push them to use it. It has to be their responsibility and their choice to start using that gifting. If they choose not to, then that's, they're not accountable to me. They're going to be accountable to God because, ultimately that's where the accountability lies. Yeah. And so I've learned that even though I see the gift, I'll give them opportunities to step out. I'll encourage them to step out, but I won't push them and put them in a position where they're forced to use it, even when they're not ready to use it. So that was a huge lesson for me years ago. Yeah.
In both these instances, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I know there's someone out there that might be going through something similar at the moment, that's getting information, to make up their minds what to do, getting some direction from this. In both cases, I see your heart was in the right place and you were attempting to do the right thing. And we all make mistakes. I've made similar mistakes in my life and I've learned from them and I've moved on. So as leaders and to the audience out there, just being a good leader doesn't mean you're never going to make mistakes or you're never going to miscalculate or misread a person or a situation. It's a lifelong learning process.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's having the humility to go, when we've made a mistake, and it's just having the humility to go back and say, and ask for forgiveness and just say, look, I blew it there. I pushed you into a spot that wasn't comfortable for you. And I apologize. So that's part of leadership, not just pushing it off saying, I'm the leader. You should have done what I told you. Yeah. No, that's not it at all. It's operating out of a heart of humility.
I agree with that. Amen. Amen. Now, difficult decisions. It's not easy to be the head of a business, a CEO. It's not easy to spearhead a project. It's not easy to be a senior pastor. Let me tell the audience, there is a price that you pay when you go into the ministry. It's not only you, it's your spouse, it's your children, because everybody looks to you. You have to live on a certain level. So it's difficult to be at the top. In Afrikaans, we have a saying that says, die hoogste bome vang die meeste wind. It says the highest trees gets the most wind. So it's lovely up there. The view is beautiful, but sometimes it can get tough. So I want to ask you, with being up there, at the top of leadership, sometimes there's difficult decisions that we have to make. And we can't please everyone all the time. We have a role to fulfill. So what is the most difficult decision that you've ever had to make as a leader?
Wow. I think for me, it's sitting down and having to correct somebody.
Yeah.
Sitting down with them and just knowing that they're blowing it, that their attitude is terrible, and that what they're doing is hurting and affecting other people. And it's sitting down to bring truth to them. We're doing it in love, obviously, but them not really receiving it the way we're wanting to. That's tough. When your heart is true, your heart is right, you only want it for their best, for them and for everyone around us. Because let's face it, bad attitudes affect everybody, not just the person with the bad attitude, right? Because they're bent and bound that they're going to rub it off on everybody else around them when they get in, have a bad attitude. And it's hard for me to help them to see that clearly, to peel that back, to help them to see that. And that's tough for me, knowing that after we've had our meeting or our discussion and they walk away, feeling even more resentful or more disgruntled, as they go away. Yeah. To me, that's really tough, because, when you have when you have a passion for people, it's hard not to see them live to their highest or live to their fullest. And then there's something in you that wants to do everything you can to help them to get over that. And so now you're thinking even more and processing even more. Okay, how can I make this work? How can I make this happen? And sometimes we just have to take our hands off and just allow them to, to fall a little bit, to, and discover it themselves. So that's, to me, is tough. Is just sharing something in love and them just not receiving it that way is tough.
Absolutely. And, we don't only deal with different personalities, like you've mentioned, also we deal with different attitudes.
Yeah.
And we deal with different worldviews. And that's very difficult to bridge. So, the intent behind it is good. You deliver the message in a loving way. And what they do with it is really up to them. But it is hard to see people not realize what their potential is and what they can be. And let me tell you, something that is very difficult to cure in anyone is, like you've mentioned, is a bad attitude. There's nothing as devastating, because you just can't get through to them.
Yes, no, it's so true, and it's tough, because, like you say, it's something that they've picked up somewhere along the line in their environment that's caused it, and you don't know what it is, whether it's a personal thing, whether it's a friendship thing, a family thing, something with their health that's going off. I know for me, I have to watch my blood sugar. When I start getting hungry and my blood sugar gets low, it's easy for me to snap and to get grumpy. Yeah. So sometimes it's a physical thing that so we don't know what the elements are, or, what somebody may have done to them that they're bringing in. We just don't know. And I think all of us, when we look back, and find ourselves in a bad attitude, it's hard to go back and pinpoint that time where that bad attitude jumped on us, right? It's hard it's like, where did that come from? It's hard to go back and figure that out. And that's why I really think it's important to have people in our lives that that we allow, to speak to us and to encourage us, or to bring out, kind of speak into those blind sides that we can't see. It's really important to have people like that.
I agree completely. And I was thinking now, as you were speaking, there's a reason why God in his wisdom put the scripture in Romans 3 verse 23 that says we all fall short of the glory of God. Because everybody has something. Yes, one. Now, we talked about our faith and the fact that we've both given a lot of ourselves to the church and to the ministry. It's a hard road. It's worth it because it's for the kingdom. But what do you perceive to be the difference between the ministry mindset and the marketplace mindset, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think, really, it comes down to one thing. In ministry, we're taught to just give and serve and do and not expect anything back, right? Whereas in the marketplace, we're encouraged to give and do and serve, but expect something in return. Yes. And so I think that's the mindset. difference is not expecting anything. And I think it's one thing that I think the church has done poorly, is just giving everything away and giving everything to people and not expecting them to contribute, not expecting them to support and to help others, whether it's financially or physically or whatever way it is. Yeah. But we don't teach it. We just encourage them to show up at church, and you put a couple pennies in the offering and everything is free. And it's not a good, I don't think that's a good model. There's much more to it. And so you get people with the ministry mindset that just don't expect. And so I work with people all the time that gave their gifts away. They just did the stuff because it was what they were passionate about, what they did well. And now to try to switch it around and say, okay, you need to be charging for your service. You need to be paid for what you do. This is your good. It's okay to have, I think that, there's two sides of it. It's okay to give some away. We all need to be giving and helping and supporting. But at the same time, there's no reason why we can't expect or shouldn't expect to be paid for what we do when it's our gift and our calling and so on. And so I think that's the difference, in my opinion, with the mindset between market and ministry, is just the finances and the expectation around that.
Yeah. That's spot on answer. Absolutely. And I went through that grueling process because I was for 15 years ministry full time, and I've always had corporate jobs as well because I always wanted to stay ahead, make sure I know what's happening in the world, build the skills. But I had this ministry mindset only, and I was giving, and then COVID hit, and I had to transform the way that I was thinking, because then the churches closed, and I thank God for that, because it took me through a time of character building, and I realized that God was really moving my mind from ministry to marketplace, and Jesus, if we look at the scriptures, was in the marketplace. There's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. I started my counseling practice in the COVID time to really work at it. And I felt so guilty the first few times just to charge.
Yeah.
I actually felt guilty.
Sure.
And that's wrong. Because, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the conditioning that we get. I mean, take Paul, for example. You want a good example. There's Paul. Look at what Paul did in terms of the churches that he started and established and continued to minister to and to build and encourage, and wrote most of the New Testament. He did all that stuff, but he was a tent maker, right? He had an entrepreneurial position that helped support his role and to fund him as he went along the way. But at the same time, he didn't object when the church, one of the churches offered to give him something. He was okay with that. And I think it's a responsibility, of us not to expect the pastors, the leaders to do everything for nothing. There needs to be, something there. But at the same time, I think it's great. Like yourself, you had an entrepreneurial heart. You had some things that you did on the side, and that you were able to swing over into that. I think is absolutely brilliant to do.
Yeah, that is the grace of God. It has really transformed my life. Thank you so much. And I agree with you. Paul is a wonderful example of that very, topic that we've discussed just now. And, God forms such a big part of our lives. I know Daniel Gomez, for instance, he was also on the podcast, and he wrote on his LinkedIn profile, God is the CEO of his business. And I mean, to me, that is just phenomenal. And God is a very big part of our lives as believers. He is in our life, he's in our love, and he's in our businesses. So where does God fit into you, in your opinion, when we think about the leadership of ourselves, the leadership of others? How do you experience God to move between all those areas in our lives?
Yeah. So for me, when I'm making decisions, when I'm teaching, when I'm helping, when I'm serving, when I'm doing all those different things, I always think, in the back of my mind, and it's probably almost an unconscious thing now that I just do. I just know eventually one day I'm going to be held accountable for all the decisions, choices, and things that I teach and say and do. And so that's always first and foremost in my mind is, I'm always aware of the choices, the attitude, the direction that I'm taking. I'm always conscious and aware that I'm going to be accountable to God for my thoughts and my actions. And I don't always get it right, but I want to do my best to make sure that I'm heading in that direction, making good choices and decisions. So I always keep that at the forefront of my mind, is that, I'm going to be held accountable for the things that I say and do. And so that's how I've incorporated it in my daily life, just thinking about that and acting out of that position all the time.
That's a wonderful way to think about it, to go about it, to approach the roles that you have, because, when we come to that realization that we are going to be held accountable, it changes our perspective, and it makes us think twice about how we speak to people, how we conduct our business, how we go about the ministry. And that's a good thing, because it helps us to reevaluate our choices as well. I always tell people, the choices we make is the life that we live. No one else made those choices but us. Yeah. And also, now you mentioned accountability. One day we will be held accountable, and no one else can answer for the choices that we made but us.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's so true. Yeah. And I think if we're more aware of that, and I think we become more aware of that the closer we grow in relationship with him. Yes. Right. If we're unaware that God's presence is in our business and in our relationships and in our day-to-day life and in our driving and, all those things, if we're not aware of that, then we don't make those conscious decisions to do, the proper thing, the right thing. It's when we're unaware and, emotionally detached that we don't think about it. But the more we are aware that he is in all those situations and with us, not just when we sit down to pray, but he's with us 24/7. That takes on a different perspective, right? It's not like we just keep him at home in our closet and say, no, I need you out now. Let's pray. Let's talk. Okay, go back in there and close the door, right? We know that he's with us always. And and the more we become aware of that, the better off we'll be. Because I think a lot of people still live with the mindset that, church is the place where I talk to God, and I'm holy and righteous and pure, and from Monday to Saturday I can just live any way I want, and I'll just make up for it on Sunday when I come back. And so people have that mindset when they and leaders tend to take that mindset. It's like, I'll be good, I'll pay my tithe, I'll do everything right on Sunday, but come Monday morning, I'm just going to be a driver, I'm going to be ruthless, and they just forget all the stuff that they just learned on Sunday or were reminded of, and live completely different. So it's learning that spills over, from Monday. Yeah. So
true. I love the way how you articulated that. I always tell people there's a magic beam at the entrance of the gate, where you park for church. The moment people go over that beam, they get the halo and everything is beautiful. Yeah. But the moment they drive back over that beam, that magic beam, they're back to. And that's what our God intends. God wants us to be the same person in church, the same person in the shop, same one at work, at home.
Yeah,
we should just be us, because we are filled with his spirit, and he sees us and he's with us every day, everywhere.
Yeah. And, I'll be honest, a number of years ago, that lesson really hit me hard. I was this great guy at the church and out in public and working in my business and stuff. And to be quite honest, by the time I got home on Sunday, I was exhausted. I was just exhausted. And I realized that I was letting my emotional guard down. I was letting my spiritual guard down. I was, lowering my tolerance for my family. I would just let everything drop when I came into the home. And then I was just aware of it one day. I went, wow, I'm offering my best outside of these walls, but I give them my worst, or I give them what's left over when I come home. And that really, hit me hard. And I think as leaders, we do need to be the same in public and in private. And we need to have safe places where we can just, talk, verbally vomit. We have to have those places where we can talk, but we have to realize that we can't store it up, keep it bottled up, and then spill out on any innocent bystander going by. We have to really be strategic in how we vent and who we vent with and talk with. And I remember one time talking to my wife. I was just really stressed with business, stressed with ministry stuff. And I just shared where I was. And she looked at me and said, I don't know what to do with that. And I realized that I can't pour all those things onto my spouse. I need to have close confidants that I can, that I can spend time with and have that opportunity to share and to have them help me see areas of weakness and help me to step through that rather than throwing it on my wife didn't need to hear that stuff. She didn't need to shoulder that stuff with me. There's other things that she can shoulder and help me with. But when it came to deeper ministry stuff, deeper management stuff, my wife just went, I don't know what to do with that. And sometimes as leaders, we can lash out at people and say, well, why don't you know? Why can't you, and get angry with them? But it's not their responsibility to carry that. And it's our responsibility as leaders to find a safe place. I went for a number of years where I had no place where I could share. I always felt like I was on. I was on in business. I was on in ministry. I was on at home. There was no place for me to go. And so I found myself every 3 weeks, I would just go away for a weekend, just to go to a retreat, just to get away. We had a small place up north, about 3-hour drive from here, and I would just go and just lock myself away for a couple of days and then come home refreshed. That was the only place I could find. So we need to have those places so that we can remain to be the same in public and in private, and have the right people at the right time that we can speak in and encourage. Like later this morning, I have my weekly accountability call. I have 2 guys we meet with every week, and we just talk about stuff in life and business and whatever comes up. And we just talk about that stuff and help each other process those things. Yeah. And so it's important to have those circles too.
It's very important. It's detrimental. It's vital, because pastors carry the weight of all the congregation members as well. People come to church, they want that guidance, they want that leadership, and they are struggling with things in their lives, but often they forget the pastor also has a life. He also has a family. He also has things that he needs to do. So he's carrying that, or she's carrying that on their shoulders, plus they have the congregation. And I agree with you, the best thing you can do is get those accountability partners that you have already. But for someone out there that's looking or searching, that's not coping, get the accountability partners that Jim has, because ministry can be a lonely road as well. You can only trust so many people and Jesus only had 3 people in his inner circle. And those are principles that we derive from the Bible. So I commend you on giving that advice to the audience, because I know there's someone that needs to hear this. Get that support group around you. Take the time away if you need it. Find that place of rest, because you also matter to God at the end of the day. And he loves you,
Yeah. And if we're speaking directly to ministry leaders, I would encourage them to have others that you can share the responsibilities with.
Yeah.
Sometimes becoming a pastor can be a prideful thing. We think, I've arrived. I'm a pastor. I'm a great leader. I can do everything. I'm invincible. God's armor is around me and I can withstand anything, right? Bring it on, until we can't.
No, we can't.
I encourage leaders to find others to shoulder some of those responsibilities. You teach people how to treat you. So if you're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no restraints, no restrictions, you're going to be treated like that all the time. You need to teach people how to treat you. And you need to teach people who they need to go to for those particular things. You need to have a good circle of leaders around you that you can delegate some of the responsibilities. As a church leader, you're not responsible to do everything on your own. You need to be looking for other leaders. And I think you're doing your church, your congregation, you're doing yourself a disservice if you do not find other leaders in your church to raise them up with responsibilities so that you can delegate things over to them. right? It's what we talked about earlier, taking a group of high school students down into Central America. I could see the leaders. I could see the worship leaders, the ones that would speak and teach. I could see the ones that were servants and wanted to serve and just to help and support. And each one of those were interconnected. And it's no different in church leadership. We need to find those. The first thing I did when I went into church ministry was I looked for people that I could pass the torch on to. Yeah. I looked for young leaders that I could rise up to take my job. And I had one time came to me and he said, Jim, he says, I'm helping doing this and I'm doing this and I'm doing this over here. He says, I'm afraid that the church is going to look at you and say, why do we have Jim on staff when I'm doing this, that, and everything else? I said, work me out of a job. It's okay. There'll always be something for us to do as leaders. And the fact that we we delegate responsibilities to someone doesn't mean that the church is going to look at us and say, oh, he's obsolete. Everybody else is doing all this stuff. No, it just, they're going to rise up and now they're going to start to build new leaders. And then that's going to give you opportunity to do even more. And it's going to help you to do what you're there to do the most. And that's to teach, to encourage. And you want to encourage the others. Let's take Paul again as an example. He said, when you show up to church, just don't show up empty-handed. You're bringing a song, you're bringing a word, you're bringing a dream, you're bringing an interpretation, you're bringing something to the club. You're not just showing up and throwing a couple nickels in the offering plate. You're bringing something. And as leaders, we need to encourage that. And then as they and then encourage those, they're going to start encouraging others. I'm sorry, I'm starting to preach, but it's
know what?
We need to look at.
You are touching on a very important point, Jim, because there's people that need to hear that. Do they realize? I don't know, but networking also happens in the church.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to network in church. That's part of relationship building. So please, anything that God places on your heart, please enlighten us, because I'm really enjoying the conversation. I'll tell you why. You hit the nail right on the head. I learned that lesson the hard way in the ministry. I was always burned out. I was available 24/7. I never had time for anything, nothing that was giving me joy. All I did was work, because I thought that is what God was expecting of me.
That's right. Yeah.
Until I got ill, and I had to go to a homeopath, and she gave me some medicine, and she helped me back to health. Normal things like omega and vitamin B, and the things that I was needing. But it's not necessary to get to that point.
That's right.
Like Jim says, delegate the tasks. We are there as a team. Yeah. Delegate those tasks so that you said something very important. The pastor is the teacher. So that the pastor has time to sit down and hear from the Lord. What is he going to teach on this week? What direction does God want to take the church in? So I agree with you completely. We have to delegate. It's good if other people can fulfill many roles. We have to encourage that, because that's also part of their leadership journey. And network. Build relationship, make disciples, form new leaders. It's very important that we do that, because, for instance, if the pastor is not there, I always tell people, then the church must run smoothly. Then they must be able to continue with the worship service, and it must be streamlined. And we have a joke in the ministers' fraternal here, Jim. We say, a pastor can't be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. We have to delegate.
Yeah. No, I think we should be, trying to work ourselves out of a job. We never will, but work with that intention. We'll never work ourselves out of a job, but attempt to do that. Attempt to work yourself out of a job. You were sharing about bad health and, how that hit you. 15 years ago, I almost died, because I hit a wall where I was ready to go to yet another meeting one night. I sat in my car ready to go. Yeah. I had the engine running, and I could not convince my hand to pull the car in gear. My brain just disconnected, and it took me 2 years to get back on track. So when you think of cost, I had built a ministry, I had built a business, I had built all these different things. And in 2 years, everything went back to zero. I had to step out of leadership. I had to, let my employees go. I had to break a lot of contracts. There was a lot of things that happened. So there was a great cost in that. Why? Because I was just doing and going and serving, and there was no limits. We need to define who we are as ministry leaders. We need to define who we are in the business world, and make sure that we map that properly. We need to look after ourselves, right? I switched my schedule around. I was going so much, I had no time or energy to exercise or to, the only reading and studying I was doing was just to prepare sermons and talks. Like, that's all I was researching. I was doing nothing for me. Now I flip everything around, like 2 hours before I got on this call, this is early morning here when we're calling. So from 6 to 8 o'clock, that's my time. I get up, I exercise, I pray, I read, I eat breakfast, I get myself ready. I have a 2-hour routine that I go through every morning now before I start my day. And it would take a lot for me, to have someone break me of that, that routine, right? I have to, just do that now, because that's the way I function now. Because like I said, 15 years ago, I almost died because I was completely burnt out and almost died.
And your testimony here is so important, because people need to realize how dangerous it is for their health, the way they are living. I understand that life is fast-paced. I understand it. I traveled, for instance, what you've mentioned now about just pausing, because it's not worth losing your health over silly little things that can be postponed.
Yeah.
I traveled last weekend and I came back on Sunday. And I was very, very tired since Monday, because we drove far and we're changing season now. So it's extremely hot outside at times. So I think our bodies are adjusting after the cold winter. And yesterday I got up and I was just so tired. And I had a live that I'd scheduled with someone. And I just contacted the person and I said, listen, my body is talking to me. I'm too tired to do the live. Let's just reschedule. I'm not up for it.
Yeah.
And that's something years ago, I would never have done that. I would have sat there, even if I had the worst migraine, I would have done it. And I just changed because I realized health is our wealth.
Sure. Yeah. Because we've been led to believe that we're doing it for the kingdom. We got to keep going. We got to be strong. But my counsel to people today is you could be one meeting away from burning out.
You see? True.
And so it's important that we monitor that stuff and have people in our lives to help us regulate and listen to those people. It's great to have good accountability circles, but if we're not listening to them, if we're not taking their counsel, then we may as well just get back on the treadmill and keep going around and around and just ignore everybody and do our thing. But if you're serious about doing it for the long term, you need to put those things in order.
I agree with you. Thank you so much for that importation of knowledge and experience. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Now, I want to ask you the next question. What are the attributes of a good leader?
The attributes of a good leader, I think, just having a servant heart.
Yeah.
If we have a servant heart, then, we can lead well, we can lead effectively, we can lead by example. We're not afraid to, roll up our sleeves and get dirty. It's just leading with a servant heart. And I think that was, one of the things, if we point to the New Testament that Jesus pointed out over and over and over again, look at, he gathered his disciples for the Last Supper, and not one of them could go around and be the servant and wash feet. He had to do it.
Yeah.
Right. So he gave a final example of living as a servant, or, leading as a servant at the Last Supper. And so that's a great example for us in the church to lead from a place of humility. We're one of 7 billion people in the world. Our opinion and our attitudes and our directions can't be right 100% of the time, right? Because everybody else has got some great ideas, and we need to, just be humble and be willing to serve from that. my first position in the church was the janitor.
Yeah.
That was my first position. And I remember the pastor that was mentoring me at the time, he said, I won't promote people in the church if they're not willing to serve. And he said, the fact that you're willing to come into this church and just be the janitor, he said it just speaks volumes. And then he began to take me under his wing. And it wasn't long after that I started to preach and do different things. But it just came from a heart of humility.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm chuckling because I've cleaned a good few church toilets in my life as well. And funny enough, when I do those tasks at church and when I mop the floors, that's when God speaks to me the most clearly.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing what it'll do.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, Jim, is leadership, in your opinion, taught or caught?
I think it's both. I mean, I think all of us are leaders. We all have the capacity to lead, and we lead at different levels, right? We have to lead in our homes, right? A mom or a dad or somebody in a home is leading because you're managing through it. We have to lead our own lives. We have to make choices and decisions every day. So we're leading our lives. So I think it's caught. I think it's instilled in all of us to lead. It's just the people that we have in our lives, or the situations that come in our lives that make us more aware of opportunity and stepping out and so on. And sure, personalities and stuff have a lot to do with it, but I think it could be taught in all of us, right? Because and it doesn't mean that we would take someone and teach them, and they could be the leader of a country. They may or they may not. They may just be a really good leader in their community, a really good leader in their home. But let's face it, if we raised up a 1,000 good leaders in our homes around our city and our community, imagine what that would do, the impact that's going to have, because that good leader in a home is going to raise up other good leaders inside that home that are going to have incredible, just make an incredible impact. So I think it's both. I think we all have leadership qualities in it. We're called to be leaders, but it's just what we do with it that really matters or makes a difference.
I agree with you. And, the effect that the leaders can have that we raise up, like you've said, I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And we will see that transpiring, as time goes by. Now, with COVID, a lot became clear about the human race. Emotional intelligence became a huge topic. How important is it when it comes to leadership that a leader has or cultivates or is assisted to tap into their emotional intelligence?
That's huge. I mean, if we don't tap into our emotional intelligence, if we don't tap into that and become, better as human beings and more aware of our emotions, aware of things, then we just may as well put robots in charge of things. Yeah. Right. That are void of emotion, that just, say, it's 8:05, this has to happen. 8:55, this has to happen. We may as well be robotic. And so, the fact that God created us with free will, created us with emotion, created us with a desire for community and to be, loved and cared for and so on. I think that's it's huge. And so as leaders, we need to, be more aware of our emotions, more aware of that in our own hearts, so that we continue to grow in that. Yeah. And it could be as simple as, spending more time with God and just listening to the tenderness that comes out of his, out of the word. It could be going out and serving at a community center someplace, serving the homeless and something, and listening to their stories and hearing things. But I think it's really important that we get to that place, because if not, we'll never get to a place where we'll lead with humility, right? Yes. If we're so emotionally disconnected, we'll never get to the place where we'll lead from humility. We can't just lead from knowledge. We have to lead with humility.
True, because as you said, we are working with people. And, and I love the fact that you tied in humility with emotional intelligence. It's the first time I've ever heard that. It's refreshing. I love the time that we spent together discussing this topic. We've got 2 questions left. I can't believe it. We're almost at the end of our session, and I have 2 last questions for you. And the second last question is, what is next for you? You've described your research project. How can we uplift you? How can we support you? What's next for you?
Yeah, so that's the closest thing on my horizon. The nearest thing on my horizon is the book, to continue the research and to continue that, because as you said, it's something that people haven't thought about. I think it's taking emotional intelligence to another level. It's taking it, and the next level would be relationship intelligence.
Yes.
And we need to begin to relate well, with our careers, with our hopes, with our dreams, with our aspirations, with our families, with our callings, with all these things. We need to learn how to navigate that. And we haven't learned how to navigate that well. We're not taught how to be good relationship people. Growing up, there's no courses in school, there's no courses in university or college. Unless you're going into human resources, you might learn a little bit about the psychology and the nature of people. But as ministry, we're not taught how to deal with all these emotional things. These are things that we have to learn. And so that's really important for me, is to get this book completed over the next few months, so that it's ready for print for next year. Because I really believe that if the last 2 years has taught us anything, it's locked a lot of us away, and we've realized the depth of connection that we need, the emotional connection that we need with people, the physical connection we need, and being locked in spaces with people for long periods of time has really, revealed stuff in our own hearts and other people's hearts and so on. And so there's been a whole process. So I think the timing of this is really important, because a lot of people, as you said, you had to make that shift from being an in-person pastor to now being somebody online offering services to continue to put bread on the table. So there's a lot of that has happened over the last 2 years for a lot of people. Now they don't know how to. Now I've got business in my home. I got my family in my home. I have everything, in my home. How do I navigate all this stuff? Everything's in this little bubble now. So what do I do with it? So that's, for me, that's my next thing, is to complete this project and get this is out there, and to really lock in, to writing, I'll get a thought and I'll just sit and I'll write on that thought for, until I've exhausted it. And now it's just putting all the pieces together with this. So that's the biggest thing for me. So yeah, I would covet everyone's prayers over the next little while, that I would really hear and map that out well, because I think the message is really important.
Yeah. Wonderful. Absolutely. I want to commend you on identifying that gap. And on filling that gap, with your research and with your project. Really, it's going to make a phenomenal change in society. And we are going to be keeping you in prayer. We're going to cover you in prayer. We're going to cheer you on. We're going to follow you. And I want to ask you, Jim, do you have any final words of wisdom for the audience? Thank you so much for blessing us with your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience and your heart. We really appreciate it.
Yes, well, I appreciate that. And thank you for that compliment. I appreciate that. And, it's come with a lot of hard lessons. It's come with a lot of hard knocks. It's come with a lot of fear, not knowing what my life was going to be like, 15 years ago when things happened. Yeah. So my final word would be to encourage people to not only listen to what I was sharing today, but listen to the wisdom of others and apply it to your life. Wisdom comes from applying the experiences that we grow through. And we don't have to go through and experience everything to be wise. We can listen to other people's counsel. We can take in their stories and their accounts. We can, people can listen to you. They can listen to me. They can listen to others. A wise person would take that instruction and apply it to their life and move forward with it. So I would encourage church leaders to take the wisdom from others. Don't think that you know it all. You know,
Yes.
you're a gift to the church, but you're not God's gift to the church. You don't have everything all in one. You have to realize that you need people outside of you. You need to look for leaders to rise up in the church. Don't be afraid of them working you out of a position, because that will never happen. If it's a true calling that God has for you, it's you're not going to work yourself out of a position. So, and I would encourage people to get back to true discipleship, right? Just bringing people in. I had a coffee with a man the other night, and he said, "I don't know if I can be a mentor." I said, "You can be a mentor. It's real easy. You know, you've been walking with God for, you know, in a personal relationship for 5 or 6 years now. You can find somebody that's been walking for 5 or 6 weeks and encourage them. That's a mentor. You've been living this stuff. Now teach somebody how to do it. And rather than trying to build the church up this way, let's try building the church out this way. And that happens side by side, bringing people into our lives that we can disciple, encourage, and so on. And it's being wise as leaders and saying, okay, I don't have it all, right? Yeah. I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the solutions. I'm not meant to have all the solutions. I need to, you know, look for people, and God will reveal those people. Those people that you're to call, all of a sudden they'll just pop out in the crowd, or in your congregation, or in the community, or wherever it happens to be. God will make it clear and begin to approach and look for that. And if you say, I don't have someone, pray harder. There's someone there. You know, there's a Jonathan for every David, right? There's just somebody that's meant to be in your life that you can. It may not be what they look, you know, what you think they should look like, but there's someone there for you. And I want to encourage you to incorporate or just invite people into your life, and do it gradually. Don't just invite someone into your life and then just blurt out everything. Just gradually introduce and share and build that common ground of trust and confidence that you can begin to share with that person. And if you've been, you know, hurt in past relationships, or hurt doing that before, then just be really wise as you move forward. Learn, you know, lessons from the way you did it the first time, and then just ask God to safeguard that as you step forward and do it again, because you're not meant to be an island.
Beautiful. Wonderful words of wisdom, and absolutely it was phenomenal having you on Meticulous Moments. You added so much value. We appreciate you, Jim. God bless you in everything you do. You are just an inspiration to us. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. This has been a pleasure, and blessings all on all your listeners and yourself and your ministry and all that you do too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to the Meticulous Moments audience, there you go. Please share and reshare this session so that we can help as many people as possible. We are going to make Jim's contact details available. Follow him on social media. Pray for him. Cheer him on. And we will see you in the next session. Goodbye.